Welcome to The Curiosity Current, the podcast where we dive deep into what's shaping today's trends and tomorrow's consumers. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm so glad you're joining me. Each episode, we tap into the minds of researchers, innovators, and insights professionals to explore how curiosity drives discovery and how discovery drives better decisions in an ever-changing market landscape. Whether you're a data enthusiast, a strategy pro, or like me, just endlessly fascinated by human behavior, this is the place for you. So get ready to challenge your assumptions, spark some fresh thinking, and have some fun along the way. Let's see where curiosity takes us next with this brand new episode.
Moz, the first company I founded, the one with my mom, it sold a few years ago, like 2021, 22, something like that. I wasn't on the board of directors anymore. I wasn't at the company anymore, but I still owned, my wife and I still owned a huge percent of the company, like 18, 19% or something. And we got this giant check in the mail, right? Like the company was not a successful exit by any means. Like the venture capitalists were not happy, but it's still, buying a $50 million company is expensive.
There was utility there.
I'm going to be a terrible person. And to which I think the reflexive response would be, well, then just give it away. And we did give away a substantive portion of it, although, certainly not all. And I don't know, found a way to be comfortable with like, hey, it's okay to, we just splurged on a bunch of fancy clothes for my little brother because I want him to look nice for some stuff, I don't know. Or yeah, we sent our nieces and cousins and some friends' kids to college, right? Like that feels awesome. That's very, very fulfilling. Their parents couldn't have paid for it. So it's like, yeah, there's cool stuff you can do, but also you don't have to be a turd burger. Google is growing so big. SEO is getting huge. And so, yeah, Moz turned into a, $50 million a year software as a service business with a couple hundred employees and a CEO who didn't really know what he was doing. Although, hot tip, I don't think CEOs know what they're doing. Most of them don't know what they're doing. You know what they're really good at is networking and seeming like they know what they're doing. Anyway, and I continue to fill that role today.
Right. Yeah. That's the lead in. That's the lead in line right there. CEOs don't know what they're doing.
Look, man, we're all just pretending. This is why I'm so opposed to CEOs making like 500 times the pay of their employees. They're not working harder. They're not better than you. They're not smarter than you. They're not more talented than you. We're just doing a job like anyone else. We just happen to have leverage with the board of directors to be able to convince people that they have to pay us more.
My hot take is it kind of stems from, everything kind of is cyclical, right? We always come back around to things from the past. So I want to be on record as saying, I'll put myself out there. I think paper surveys are coming back. I think,
That's the hottest of hot takes I've heard in a while.
I love it. I love this hot take.
Well, let me tell you why, because we do have a little bit of research. We're looking at this a little bit further, but nobody answers their phone anymore. So that's getting harder to do. Spam messages on both text, and email. I think of like my parents who are just scared to death to click anything that comes through email and who are, even myself, like putting my information out onto a website, just being very careful about. So you look at this. So if we're not doing electronically and people don't feel that that's no longer secure, or I think we've all known somebody who's been scammed or been, had their credit cards compromised or whatever it is, where are you going to go? And I feel like physical paper surveys there's start to be a turn of, there's a perception that those are safer and more reliable.
How do you make the return process simple? There's so many parallels, including foam in shoes and foam in mattresses. And so it was really fascinating to me when I started getting into the challenges that these two brands, ASICS and Resident, had, and just the parallels between the two.
It's probably really helpful. I know a lot of times too, for ideation, having a parallel, sort of a meta to refer back to can be so helpful, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like now when I'm doing some user experience research, I'm bringing in footwear sites being like, let's shop this site and see what this is like, because there's got to be something, right? Like a shoe guide versus a mattress guide. Those things are similar.
Yes, I love that.
I aspire to be an elite sleeper someday.
Seriously. And I wouldn't refer to myself as an elite runner, but I will say I've always been an ASICS diehard and as a runner. So love that you have that background. I was very curious to get to talk to you today.
I still make foot contact before eye contact.
People remember stories, not statistics. It makes it kind of emotionally resonate with you. It makes it actionable. And especially now, I think decision makers, especially high level executives like CEOs, for example, it's just absolute information overload, right? With lots of data that is not related to market research, like finance, operations, HR. And so storytelling to me is really what helps separate the signal from the noise, right? And here I think of something that has played a really important role for me throughout my career, which is this idea of an elevator test, right? So I always think if a stakeholder hears my presentation and then they go meet their colleague in the elevator, would they be able to explain the kind of core insight and action to someone in 20 seconds or less, right? And if my story is strong enough and it's emotionally compelling, then, the answer is always going to be yes.
Really cool. I like the idea of kind of turning the elevator pitch on its head and adding that creative element. Like, how do you make it sticky to the person who has to convey the value, even though they themselves might not be the subject matter expert? They just heard your story. I think that's a great idea. That's a great test. I'm gonna take note of that one. I'm gonna use that one.
If you want to know why you get some angry people into your studies, bounce around a router for a little bit. Spend some time, spend 20 minutes trying to qualify for a study. Think that you get into one and then 5 minutes later you get screened out. So we really need everyone to jump on board and not do that, because you want someone by the time they actually get into your study to not be bitter about it and want to finish and sort of fight their way through. We want to make that as positive of experience as possible, because when they can't get into the study and when they get there, it sucks. What are the chances they want to take a survey again? And we do not have infinite human capital to support what we're doing. And it's an easy thing to say, but not everyone is thinking about that, whether they're sitting on the, panel or supply side or like agency or design side, but we all should be.
100%. It is a precious touch point. And like, if you're on the supplier side, not only that, it's an extension of your brand. It's just completely critical.
As a manager, be genuine. If you're going to offer that, your people likely won't take you up on it. But if they do, you'll find a way to make it happen. Support them. They support you. You make a better work product together. So I will, if somebody's rushing out the door for an emergency, I will ask, what can I do to keep this moving? What do you need from me? And together as a team, you do come together and make that happen. But yes, the ultimate end product, you get loyalty, you get connection, you have demonstrated empathy with your people, and they will show up for you in just the same way.
Absolutely will. I think that point right there is such a good one. And something that strikes me in all of that is that there's a foundation of trust there that allows all of that to happen. And I love that. I mean, that's such an important part of cultivating a strong team. To broaden that out a little bit, I find that the insights world, and again, that's the world that we live in, and I don't mean to imply that there aren't many other work worlds that are the same, but it can require long hours and a high level of emotional intelligence because it's this highly cross-functional function.
We will always have those stakeholders that love to lean on either conjoints or they only want to lean on focus groups. And it is our jobs as like the advocates for the customers to allow them to see the beauty in both and what it can bring you. And so I feel like as customer researchers, we're not just the data keepers. We are the voice of the customers. We are the people that brings their stories to life, their pain points to life. And you can only do that if you truly understand your data, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, and building that trust so they can know like, hey, if they are the voice of the customer, then what I should tell them is like, this is what we want to learn. These are my objectives, and then trust them to go and do it. But you have to build that trust and bring that open communication to the table and constantly fight for your customer, even when it feels like it's an uphill battle.
Absolutely. That is a common theme that I feel like we hear, and that is a good takeaway for me because I think a lot of our guests tell us that, right? That it's not just your job to be the gatekeeper, right? Your job is to have a point of view and to really share it and advocate for that customer point of view.
If we can extend the device for the customer, we get them for 3 years, and then customers pay much less for it, right? And we can build on Probably we'll get to it, like how phone line itself has become kind of a commoditized. So you look for services on top of it. So longer duration you are with the customer, you understand them a bit better, and you can tell them what this customer is truly looking for. Phone is a mean to their need, and the need could be much more than just having a telephone line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting to hear you talk through that. I worked in telecom. I actually worked for a mobile manufacturer. It's been about 10 years. And at that time, it's so different than what you're talking about now. You're right that like every year, just the iterations that were happening were large and big and would take your phone so much further. And so even waiting those 2 years could be kind of brutal, but it doesn't feel like that anymore at all. So it totally makes sense.
I think you have to have the right inputs and resources. I think certainly human beings could uncover the same ground, if not more predictive with insights, but all of that is a dependency, right? However, AI is going to expedite things, enable thoughtful iteration. And sometimes it may be met with apprehension. And I'll give you an example. I'll go back to 2008, the mortgage crisis, Michael Burry. He was looking for data points that no one else was looking at. And he was surfacing those things. And, I think things like that, you're going to have human intervention to validate, advocate, and influence. AI is not going to do that. It's only as good as the person who's ingesting the information, and it can be easily dismissed. So I didn't really answer your question. I kind of just danced around, but did you like that?
No, that's great. I think that's great perspective. I mean, it's so hard to tell where things are going to be. To your point, even 6 months from now, it's just important to always keep that human in the loop. It makes a lot of sense.
This idea of rivalry, like while important to the regalia of the fan experience, is actually not as widespread as we think it is. So that's just kind of one thing. And then there's this other idea that comes up in these conversations about sports fandom where we get to this notion of hate, right? And so it's like, oh, but what about two rival teams who hate each other? Is that creating connection? Isn't that creating more disconnection and dislocation in society? And to that, I would say absolutely not. Because when we use the word hate in this context, it fundamentally means something different than when we use it in other contexts.
It's sports hate.
It's sports hate. It's sports love. It's sports hate. It's all these things. So no, like the reality is, if you are a Ohio State Buckeye fan, talking to Michigan Wolverine fans is more fun than talking to, USC Trojan fans. Like that's the reality of it.
That's a great point.
Rivalry is not the critical thing. Hate is actually not the right way to think about this. And so you start to pull away what doesn't matter and what's not true to get to what actually is true about the fan experience.
The Curiosity Current is brought to you by AYTM. To find out how AYTM helps brands connect with consumers and bring insights to life, visit AYTM.com. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the Curiosity Current on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.